Recording. Okay, over to you, Francis.
Righty then. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this 91st webinar on the Secret Doctrine. This webinar series is available on makara.us under the subheading Mori Federation Webinars and Webinar Series in Progress, as shown here. All episodes of this, the Secret Teachings of All Ages, and the Treatise on Cosmic Fire series are available on YouTube. Just do a search for Francis Donald and the webinar series you'd like to view. You can also access any of these webinars on the homepage of moriafederation.com up in the upper left-hand corner. So if you misplaced your email invitation, you can just go to Mori Federation and pick up your link that way. Okie doke. This month in Old Diaries, Colonel Olcott characterizes the mindset of the 19th century British colonizers towards the Indian populace. Could we get a reader, please?
I'll start off. Mr. Fawcett's first lecture on the history of philosophy was given in our hall at Adyar on the 19th of July. The room looked grand with its decking of palm fronds, flags, lights, and the large picture of Sarasvati, the Indian Minerva, suspended over the speaker's platform. Every seat was occupied, and the audience, which was mainly composed of university graduates and college undergraduates, was as intellectual a one as any speaker could or wished to address. To us who know the Hindus, it is hardly credible how little is known on this side of their character by their official superiors. The majority of military and civilian British officials return home. Sometimes after 30-odd years' residence in this country, with no other impression of the Hindus than that which they have derived in their superficial relations with them in public offices, or from their exasperating experience with their sycophantic, usually illiterate, and often intemperate domestic servants.
Thanks, BL. Next reader. By the way,
Nadel,
here you'll see Colonel Olcott right here with the beard, and it's a blow up over here. And next to him is HPB, who is right there. Okay, go ahead.
How could they possibly expect to be on terms of good understanding with high caste men, that is, gentlemen, whom they treat in official intercourse with unconcealed disdain, commonly classifying them as the N-word, without caring at all whether it comes to the insulted gentleman's ears or not? It is inexpressibly sad to me to see this awful waste of good opportunity to bind the Indian Empire to the British throne with silken bands of love, which are beyond comparison stronger than all the steel links that can be forged out of swords and bayonets. At the present writing, we are blessed with a viceroy, Lord Curzon of Kettleton, who has shown a tact more exquisite than any of his predecessors within the past 20 years. And I feel sure that he will leave behind him, on returning to England, a better feeling than has prevailed for many years. Politics, however, are not my concern, and I have only been tempted into this digression because of my own love for the Hindus and my sympathy in all their troubles.
Thank you, Nadel. Okay, so we're kind of midstream in this detailing or HPB's discussion of the divine orders, which are kind of loosely, not absolutely, but generally connected with DK's, Master DK's description of the 7 manifest hierarchies, right? So we've made our way through them. We began our last session with HPB's commentary on the E section of the verse, which states right here, the 4 from the 1. Up to this point, we had already considered the first 3 celestial orders, as they're called, which the verse describes as, quote, the beginning of sentient formless life. These are, first, the divine vehicle, the one from the mother spirit, Atman, then the spiritual, Atma Buddhi, spirit, soul, then the 3 from the one, Atma Buddhi, Manas, spirit, soul, and intellect, called the triads. Here's one association with the hierarchies, which DK describes as lesser builders conferring form and lords of sacrifice and love. The 4th order, we then learned, are the highest group among the rupa, or form inhabiting groups, which HPB tells us is the, quote, nursery of the human conscious spiritual souls. So the spiritual triad, as the first form of the monad, is indeed the source or nursery of soul expression on the higher monastic subplanes. This is the human hierarchy par excellence, this 4th order that she's describing, because it is the realm of the human monads, also called the initiates, lords of sacrifice, lords of love, imperishable jivas, and lords of flame, the latter expressive of the element of fire, which is associated with both Tiferet and Manas, or really higher Manas. The 4th kingdom in nature is the outer expression of this hierarchy. This is the place of our true selves. We then took a look at a footnote on, quote, invisible beings called angels, elementals, etc., where we learned that modern chemistry should have been forced to adopt and recognize the same ratio of progression and order in the evolution of chemical atoms as occultism does, both for the dhyanis and atoms, analogy being its first law. This statement implies that the visible realm of chemical atoms and molecules evolves in the same patterned ratios as the invisible domain of dhyanis and occult atoms. In other words, the laws governing physical matter mirror those that shape subtler spiritual entities. The builders of occult atoms, higher intelligences operating behind the scenes, employ the same progressive laws as those responsible for forming the lower quaternary. And therefore, HPB is suggesting that if we could but see, we would see that they have the same sense of progression and order as do the physical atoms of substance. Okay, I want to again invite you to comment and ask questions whenever anything is a little puzzling. It's always more interesting to have a dialogue than just a lecture. So yeah, speak up anytime you feel the urge. Okay, so let's get a reader for this shorter 2nd footnote to begin this session.
Kirsten, can you read that for us, please?
Yes. The number 7 does not imply only 7 entities, but 7 groups or hosts, as explained before. The highest group, the Asuras, born in Brahma's first body, which turned into night, are septenary, that is, divided like the Petris into 7 classes, 3 of which are Arupa, bodiless, and 4 with bodies. They are in fact more truly our Petris ancestors than the Petris who projected the first physical man.
Oops, sorry, I was muted. Okay, so first, the number 7 does not imply only 7 entities, but 7 groups or hosts, as explained before. So this is referencing, you can see here on the photo of the page, this footnote is referenced by this, the first group, the first septenary. So she gets into a description of this. So all individual as well as group entities called hosts by HPB manifest through 7 principles: 3 arupa or formless sheaths and 4 rupa or form bodies. Each host is itself subdivided into 7 classes, mirroring the pattern found among the Petris, which are the spiritual ancestors of humanity. So all manifestation is sevenfold because they express through 7 principles, 3 forming the triad of non-physical, and then 4 forming the form aspect of whatever is manifesting. Okay, next, the highest group, the Asuras. Asuras means no form or bodiless, born in Brahma's first body, which turned into night, are septenary, that is, divided like the Petris into 7 classes, 3 of which are arupa and 4 with bodies. See Vishnu Purana Book 1. So this highest sevenfold group of asuras are the primordial Dhyani Chohans. This passage from the second volume of Secret Doctrine illustrates that the asuras are identical with both the Babylonians and the informing gods of Egypt. So could we get a reader, please, for this passage?
Martha, can you read that for us, please?
Yes. Elsewhere in this work, it is shown on equally good authority that the Indo-Iranian Asura was always regarded as sevenfold. This fact, combined with the name Mazda as above, which makes of the sevenfold Asura the Lord or lords collectively, who bestow intelligence, connects the Amshasapens with the Asuras and with our incarnating Dayan Choans, as well as with the Elohim and the 7 informing gods of Egypt, Chaldea, and every other country.
Okay, so it's a cultural cross reference to the septenary or sevenfold nature of their highest god. You know, no matter which ancient form that God takes. In this passage, also from early in the second volume of the SD, HPB gives a more comprehensive explanation of Brahma's night body, which was shown here, where it says here the highest group. The Asuras born in Brahma's first body, which turned into night. Okay, so we learn more about that here. Can we get a reader, please?
Scott, can you read that for us, please?
So-called demons, asuras, who are esoterically the self-asserting and intellectually active principle, are the positive poles of creation, hence the first produced. This is in brief the process as narrated allegorically in the Puranas. Quote, having concentrated his mind into itself and the quality of darkness pervading Brahma's assumed body, the Asuras, issuing from his thigh, were first produced, after which, abandoning this body, it was transformed into night. Unquote. Primarily in the Rig Veda, the Asuras are shown as spiritual divine beings. Their etymology is derived from asu, breath, the breath of God, and they mean the same as the Supreme Spirit or the Zoroastrian Ahura. It is later on, for purposes of theology and dogma, that they are shown issuing from Brahma's thigh, and that their name began to be derived from a, privative, and sura, God, or not a God, and thus became the enemy of the gods.
Yeah, kind of the fallen angels derive from this same idea. It seems like all cultures, even Egypt, fell for this exoteric understanding of the formlessness, seeing it as the enemy of the gods. But we get a sense of their true nature from this paragraph that talks about their etymology, which is derived from breath. The breath of God is always the highest expression. You know, it's, you could say, at the first plane of expression of the inexpressible, right? Of that which lies beyond expression. And then below the breath, you have the sound, and then the articulation of that sound. So the asuras are at this high level, which could be called the breath of God. They're often described as refusing to incarnate. Well, the truth is that they're in at such a high level of being that they're beyond the ability to incarnate. So yeah, this is a favorite theme of HPB. She's covered it before. Okay.
Francis,
Yeah.
back there, the introduction of the thigh birth always interests me, and it comes from Egypt as well, and is connected with the Great Bear. But why thigh? I don't know if that is to not talk about the generative system.
Yeah.
It's actually the thigh.
Yeah, I've heard it described both ways. Do you remember which sign, which astrological sign rules the thigh?
Sagittarius.
Sagittarius. Right. So there may be, some illumination in that, that the Sagittarian quality and the thigh being the third fire sign, and therefore that most oriented towards the physical form, so you could see it as demonstrative of a coming forth, as opposed to, say, Aries or Leo, which are progressively, more monadic and soul oriented. This Sagittarius is oriented towards the actual body, hence the centaur, right? The form aspect of man. So there could be a clue there. And also, I think there are constellations where that I just can't remember which It's the Great Bear, isn't it?
Yes.
That is associated with the thigh. That's right. Yeah, which now to me, that suggests the thigh as a blind for the genitals, because of the, that initiating source of all manifestation through the ray aspects of the Great Bear. But it's really the combination of the Great Bear and the Pleiades that is responsible for the, it's a kind of father mother that initiates manifestation. So yeah, well, let's see here. I want to see it in this context. Yeah. So the breath of God and the Great Bear would be very much connected, because it's breath of God is the first level of manifestation, as is the Great Bear, right? So that's, and the fact that the Great Bear is known as Brahma's thigh, I think we might have um, the source just in that. It's a complete blind. I wouldn't I can't think of any quality specifically about the thigh. It's associated with Sagittarius because of it's the source of motion, of forward motion. Um, yeah, but not beyond that. Yes, Joe?
Oh, I just am fascinated. If you breathe or speak Ashura, do it about 6 or 7 times to yourself. It is the breath of God.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
identify it.
Sure.
It's amazing.
Sure.
Well, that's interesting. And of course, ah is the word associated with the first aspect, which is interesting. But that's just because it indicates formlessness. But that's very much related to that family of words that are associated with the A in the AUM, which are the pure spirit aspect. So, uh, okay. All right. So we finished up the second footnote with they are in fact more truly our Petries than the Petries who projected the first physical men. So, and she's talking about the they that she's talking about is these asuras, right? Uh, the ones that are associated with BL. Can you mute whoever's coming through there? So the asuras are more truly our ancestors because they have bestowed on us the spark of mind, whereas the lesser Petries could only provide humankind with its lower sheaths. In volume 2, HPB says of this lower class of Petrie, they would not, simply because they could not, give to man that sacred spark which burns and expands into the flower of human reason and self-consciousness, for they had it not to give. Okay, so it's the first 2.5 root races is the work that these lower Petries, lunar Petries are called, work to create the form aspect of a human being. And then in the middle of the third race, the solar Petries come forth and through sacrifice provide the spark of mind, which turns into the self-conscious awareness. Okay, back to the main text, where we continue with HPB's commentary on the celestial orders, which correspond to both the hierarchies and the Sephira. In this passage, we first continue with the E section, the quote, 4 from the 1, followed by the F section, quote, and the 5. So could we get a reader, please?
Magda, can you read that for us, please?
Yes. The Darwinian theory, however, of the transmission of acquired faculties is neither taught nor
Magda?
accepted in occultism.
Magda,
Yeah,
could you get either closer to your mic or something? Your
yeah.
voice sounds very muddy.
Okay. The Darwinian theory, however, of the transmission of acquired faculties is neither taught nor accepted in occultism. Evolution in it proceeds on quite other lines. The physical, according to esoteric teaching, evolving gradually from the spiritual, mental, and physical. This inner soul of the physical cell, this spiritual class that dominates the germinal class, is the key that must open one day the gates of the terra incognita of the biologist, now called the dark mystery of embryology. See text and notes infra. The fifth group is a very mysterious one, as it is connected with the microcosmic pentagon, the five-pointed star representing men. In India and Egypt, these Dhyanis were connected with the crocodile, and their abode is in Capricorn. These are convertible terms in Indian astrology, as this 10th sign of the zodiac is called Makara, loosely translated crocodile.
Thank you, Magda. Okay, first, the Darwinian theory, however, of the transmission of acquired faculties is neither taught nor accepted in occultism. Evolution in it proceeds on quite other lines. The physical, according to esoteric teaching, evolving gradually from the spiritual, mental, and psychic. Okay, so this is a kind of back to basics comment. Darwinism doesn't recognize humanity's unseen higher principles, which began with the divine monad and end with the physical body, having passed downwards or outwards through 5 intermediate stages, which include the spiritual triad, the soul, and the monastic, astral, and etheric sheaths. Next, this inner soul of the physical cell, this spiritual plasm that dominates the germinal plasm, is the key that must open one day the gates of the terra incognita of the biologist, now called the dark mystery of embryology. So the quote unquote inner soul of the physical self, physical cell, is the noumenal source of a cell's outer expression. In a human being, the quality of those cells that make up the lower sheath is determined by the permanent atoms, along with the 7 spiralae, which gradually awaken to enliven each of these permanent atoms. For it is these spiralae that determine the quality and nature of the outer cells, the literal quality of the substance of these outer cells, as well as informing them with the vitality of the second aspect, the soul aspect. It's the way the soul reaches into the physical form. When through etheric vision, awareness of these permanent atoms is established, biology and embryology will be forever changed. Next, we come to the F section of the commentary, referencing the words in the verse and the 5, which has to do with the 5th celestial order. Right? Commentary states, F, The fifth group is a very mysterious one, as it is connected with the microcosmic pentagon, the five-pointed star representing man. This is the dual fifth hierarchy, representing both the soul in expression, not the soul on its own plane, but soul in expression, and the personality aspects, and is thus described as both the perfect ones and the seekers of satisfaction. You can see those. Here it says the perfect ones. Here you see the seekers of satisfaction. Depending on where in esoteric astrology you find the quotes about this particular hierarchy. In this context, the five-pointed star represents Manas, eventually perfected by the quote-unquote perfect ones. To my mind, the fifth hierarchy embraces both Netzach at Tiferet, Netzach as the triumphant personality, Tiferet as the informing soul. The five-pointed star also represents the five lower principles that manifest during incarnation, according to first generation theosophy, which is an order from high to low. You have manas, lower mind, kamarupa, desire body, prana, or the life force, then the linga sharira, which is the etheric astral double, and finally the sthula sharira, which is the physical body. And you can see those are indicated here in context to one's entire constitution. Finally, in India and Egypt, these dhyanis were connected with a crocodile. So we're talking about this fifth group, these particular fifth cosmic order dhyanis were connected with the crocodile, and their abode is in Capricornus. These are convertible terms in Indian astrology, as the 10th sign of the zodiac is called Makara, loosely translated crocodile. So Makara is the Hindu name for Capricorn, which in Egypt was called Sobek, or crocodile. Although the sign of cardinal earth, Capricorn is esoterically associated with the sea. One of the symbols, in fact, favored by DK is the sea goat, right? Rather than just the goat. That's the more exoteric symbol. The natural habitat of the crocodile, the sea is the natural habitat of the crocodile, because though the dhyanis of the fifth creative hierarchy ruled by Capricorn have their being in the profound depths of consciousness symbolized by the waters, to the crocodiles, they emerge from these waters in service to humanity, as described in this passage from a bit later in volume 1, quote, "It becomes the task of the fifth hierarchy, the mysterious beings that preside over the constellation Capricornus, Makara, or crocodile in India as in Egypt, to inform the empty and ethereal animal form and make of it the rational man." Okay, and she continues in this description. Could we get a reader, please?
Joe, can you read that for us, please?
The word itself is occultly interpreted in various ways, as will be shown further on. In Egypt, the defunct man, whose symbol is the pentagram or the five-pointed star, the points of which represent the limbs of a man, was shown emblematically transformed into a crocodile, Sibak or Sevek or seventh, as Mr. Gerald Massey says, showing it as having been the type of intelligence, is a dragon in reality, not a crocodile. He is the dragon of wisdom, or manas, the human soul, mind, the intelligent principle, called in our esoteric philosophy the fifth principle. Says the defunct Osirified in chapter Lala, Book of the Dead, or the ritual under the glyph of a mama-form god with a crocodile head. 1. I am the god, crocodile, presiding at the fear at the arrival of his soul among men. I am the god crocodile, brought for destruction, an allusion to the destruction of divine spiritual purity when man acquires the knowledge of good and evil, also to the fallen gods or angels of every theogony.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Joe. Chapter Lala is sometimes known as Chapter 88.
Thank you.
Okay, first, the word itself is occultly interpreted in various ways, as will be shown further on. In Egypt, the defunct man, whose symbol is the pentagram or the five-pointed star, the points of which represent the limbs of man, was shown emblematically transformed into a crocodile, sebak or sevek or seventh, as Gerald Massey says, showing it as having been the type of intelligence, is a dragon in reality, not a crocodile. So starting at the top, the quote unquote word itself is makara, which signifies the gate or boundary crossing between the lower and higher realms, and thus represents the entry point for life's regenerative currents. Again, you see this image of the crocodile is perfect for describing this ability to go from one side of this source to the other in this dual hierarchy, from the waters of life above to the manifested realms below. As with the Egyptian Sebak, Makara embodies the Dionic hosts who channel the waters of life into form. In Bailey's works, Makara personifies Ikchehashakti, the divine will to manifest, which bridges spiritual impulse and concrete form by channeling the solar fire into the human mind. That's what this energy of Ikchashakti is. Ikchahashakti. I actually practiced that word before this webinar, but it totally eludes me. Ikchahashakti. Okay, so what that is the channeling or the energy which channels the solar fire into human mind. Here's an Egyptian five-pointed star, emblem of a deceased human being. The transformation of the five-pointed star into Sibak, 5 into 7, represents incorporation of the higher two principles. The fact that crocodiles live in two environments make them a natural metaphor for a bridge between physical life and the afterlife, or the higher life, as well as between personality and soul. This quote from Massey's The Natural Genesis shows the connection between 7, Sevek, the dragon, and the crocodile. Can we get a reader, please?
Oops, just lost my list. Marguerite, can you read that for us, please?
Sure. The symbolical dragon is somewhat of a crocodile with wings, and the crocodile was a type of typhon the genetrix of the 7 stars. Sevek, the crocodile, is the capturer. The image of the genetrix was continued in Sevek, her son. The crocodile was a type of darkness, even to the tip of its tail, which is a sign for black. Therefore, it is feasible that the mythical dragon of the abyss, the waters of source, was founded on the crocodile. Assuredly, no apter image of the jaws of darkness, as the earth or grave silent, wide open, and waiting to devour, could have been adopted than this figure of the tongueless crocodile to form a basis for the mythical dragon.
Thank you, Marguerite. Any thoughts or questions about anything so far? Okay. Next.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. Ariane speaking.
Yes.
This may be a distraction, but I thought, I mean, I know the dragon is a symbol in Chinese mythology too, but it seems to me like the dragon also is a picture of a dinosaur, like the flying dinosaurs. It seems like it is really a literal depiction of that, and also of defiance of laws, like the law of gravity, like all birds have. Angels have that capacity. Sometimes you see, like in China, the picture of the the dragon and the tiger in conflict. The tiger's on land and the dragon is in the sky. But I also think of, and this again is associative, is that, you know, the dinosaurs seem to have been destroyed by a meteor, that they became too violent, right? So I'm just wondering if there's any way to connect these ideas, or if it's just, is there any substance in that related to what you're talking about here or not?
Well, there's 2 dragons in most developed mythologies of the ancient world. There's 2 dragons, the lower and the higher dragon. And the lower dragon represents a number of things. It can represent the personality, you know, for instance, the angel of the presence, and the dweller on the threshold can be dragon-like in that this is the dragon that St. George slays, right? The one that hoards and has a virgin maiden, and this dragon is unable to spend his wealth, but has this the lowest aspects of the personality defined this. And St. George slaying that dragon is a metaphor for control of the personality. Egypt had this same dragon. It was called Apep, A-P-E-P, and it meant all the ensnaring aspects that would take you away from spiritual orientation, right? And then you have the higher dragon, which is the dragon of wisdom, which is very much connected with manas, and on its higher levels, that is higher mind, with Capricorn. The blind for that dragon is, you know, as is indicated by this this passage on the dragon here. The blind for this is the crocodile, but it's, you know, it says here the crocodile forms the basis for the mythical dragon. And here, instead of the lower waters, because after all, a lot of the aspects of the lower dragon have to do with the lower subplanes of the astral plane. So it's a natural metaphor to see the lower dragon as having its hidden potency in those lower waters. And then the higher dragon are the waters of, has its abode in the waters of life, and then emerge from them in order to bless the personality aspect. So in that way, it's connected with the higher mind, which is the realm of the soul. And Yeah. And of course, the dragon is also associated with the great bear. And so it has, the divine dragon of wisdom is the solar logos. So it's all logoi, such as planetary logos, are also dragons of wisdom. Yeah, so there's many associations, but the metaphor is intact as one who lives in hidden realms and then comes forth in that way. And there's much of this, which is connected with Capricorn, is hidden in terms of it being truly revealed. The true nature of the mystery of the dragon, the Makara, the Kumara. And Makara and Kumara are deeply interrelated, and their connection with this dragon-like life, which is monastic in its essential nature. Okay.
Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, you're very welcome. All right, so he is the dragon of wisdom, or manas, the human soul, mind, the intelligence principle, called in our esoteric philosophy the fifth principle. So, identifying manas as the dragon of wisdom reveals its role as bestower of the fiery, intelligent spark, which, when aligned with Buddhi and Atman, Buddhi, Manas, right, transforms the five-pointed personality into the seven-pointed Savek. In our solar system, this fifth principle of Manas has its source in Capricorn, or Makara, which rules the fifth creative hierarchy. Through fifth ray Venus, its hierarchical ruler. HPB here associates Ma, the first syllable of Makara, with the number 5, as is shown in this numerological breakdown. Can we get a reader for this further description of Makara by HPB?
And Veronica, can you read that for us, please?
5-pointed star, just down my lane. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
The word
Yeah, it
Makara,
is right down your lane. You're right.
yes, and I love symbols. The word Makara, says the author of the 12th sign of the zodiac, contains within itself the clue to its correct interpretation. The letter Ma is equivalent to number 5, and Kara means hand. Now, in Sanskrit, I don't know what, I can't say that.
Tribhujam.
Tribhujam means a triangle. Bhujam or Karam, both synonyms, being understood to mean a side. So Makaram or Pancharam means a pentagon. The 5-pointed star or pentagon represents the 5 limbs of man. What is the meaning and the reason of this figure? Because Manas is the 5th principle, and because the pentagon is a symbol of man, not only of the 5-limbed, but rather the thinking, conscious man. In Greece, Kara means head.
Oh, really? Kara.
Yeah. In ancient Greek, Kara means head.
Kara?
Yes, Kara.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
And that's how Ismini starts her woe for her dead brother. Oh, Aftadelphon, Ismini's Kara.
See, I like that actually even better than, this, by the way, is a quote from Suba Rose, who wrote this 12 Signs of the Zodiac. And that seems more esoteric to me, Kara as head, than he does. He just says, little 5, and Kara means hand. Where does Kara mean hand? In Sanskrit? I don't know. He doesn't say. Maybe. But I think I like the idea of Kara
Maybe it's hidden,
as
something
head
was
is
wrong.
yeah, I like that better actually. I think that's more appropriate. Anyway,
And what reminded me of the five-pointed star symbol is that you can't do the five-pointed star upward. You've already done the downward, because if you do the combine the insides, you will make a five-pointed star that's downward. It's always both ways.
that's right. And when you put that symbol inside, then you have a symbol for soul consciousness, because, you know, in other words, the downward pointing pentagram has been contained, literally, and therefore the personality has been made a vehicle of the higher pentagon, which is the
So
soul.
it symbolized the soul-infused personality.
Yeah, I think you could say that it can be a symbol for the soul infused personality. And DK tells us that the 10-pointed star is a symbol of the liberated man. So there you have it. You know, instead of having, you know, you can take a pentagram, I'm sorry, and reverse it and overlay it. I actually did that on somewhere. At the same size and have a 10-pointed star, but I think it's more accurate to actually connect the inner points. More accurate in terms of as being a symbol for the soul-infused personality. So yeah, good point. Thanks for bringing that forth. Okay. Any thoughts or questions about this? One thing we're ignoring is this idea that the 5-pointed star becomes the Sevek, which was described earlier, I think. I want to see if I can find it. Yeah. In Egypt, the defunct man, whose symbol is the pentagon or the 5-pointed star, points of which represent the limbs of man, was shown emblematically transformed into the crocodile, Sebak or Sevek. So if we just take it as the 7th or Sevek, which Joe Massey makes a big point of, then we can see that you're regaining your higher principles. And interestingly, DK tells us that, you know, at I think it's the 3rd initiation, the 5-pointed star flashes above the head of the initiate, but at a later initiate, my memory is telling me the 6th, but I could be wrong. The 7-pointed star flashes above the head. So there's some continuity in those two teachings. Okay, so next up, says the defunct in chapter 88, says the defunct Osirified in chapter 88, Book of the Dead, or the ritual under the glyph of a mummiform god with a crocodile's head, ... So to become Osirified was to merge with the eternal underlying principles. That is to move from the 5 to the 7. You see, that is merging into the higher principles of creation and regeneration. The mummiform god with a crocodile's head refers to the god Sobek, who was invoked as a, you know, exoterically as a protective force during passage through the Duat, or the underworld, as described in the Book of the Dead. But I think esoterically it was invoked in order to merge with that higher aspect of self. Yes, and Veronica.
For the 5-pointed star you said before, I was listening to Michael Robbins' commentaries, and he was saying that the 6-pointed star is other times considered lower than the 5 and other times higher. And in treatise and cosmic fire, actually a 5-pointed star means that you're able to handle and have control of 5 energies. And then it becomes 6 energies, and then it becomes 7 energies. And I guess you have control of the planes, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, and so on.
Yeah, so the higher version is the Seal of Solomon, which is the symbol of the monad. The lower version of the 6-pointed star is the balance of the higher and lower equilateral triangles, because they're placed directly over each other, and it suggests this place of equanimity, a kind of Libran place of achieving the balance between the lower and the higher aspect. So, you know, it is a multiform symbol in that way. Okay. Anybody else? All right. Finally, the quote from the Book of the Dead. I am the god, crocodile, presiding at the fear, at the arrival of his soul among men. I am the god crocodile, brought for destruction, an allusion to the destruction of divine spiritual purity when man acquires the knowledge of good and evil, also to the fallen gods or angels of theogony. It's just, theogony just means the study of the gods. Okay, notice that Sobek is not presiding over the destruction of the heart of the deceased. In fact, just the opposite. Here he presides over the destruction of the divine spiritual purity when the jiva comes into incarnation. So it's the destruction of the higher principles, which Sobek, interestingly and appropriately, calls the fear. This moment of fear marks the soul's loss of direct unity with spirit and its awakening to duality, mortality, and the passions of the lower nature. I am the god crocodile brought for destruction means that the higher principles are temporarily lost at incarnation. So this is, you know, the 7 become the 5. The 2 higher are lost, just as the 5 become the 7 on the triumph of the return, on the return path. Okay, next up, could we get a reader, please?
Ariane, can you read that for us, please?
Yes, of course. 2. I am the fish of the great Horus, as Makara is the crocodile, the vehicle of Varuna. I am merged in Sectin. This last sentence gives the corroboration of and repeats the doctrine of esoteric Buddhism, for it alludes directly to the 5th principle, manas, or the most spiritual part of its essence, rather, which merges into, is absorbed by, and made one with Atma Buddhi after the death of man. For 2nd is the residence or loka of the god Kem, Horus Osiris, or father and son. Hence the devotion of Atma Buddhi. In the ritual of the dead, the defunct is shown entering into Sekhem with Horus thought and emerging from it as pure spirit. 64:29. Thus the defunct says, 130. I see the forms of myself as various men transforming eternally. I know this chapter. He who knows it takes all kinds of living forms.
Thank you, Ariane. Okay, first, I am the fish of the great Horus, as Makara is the crocodile, the vehicle of Varuna. I am merged in Sekten. So the fish is being suggested by what follows is the kind of vehicle of the great solar energy of Horus, just as Makara, the crocodile, is the vehicle of Varuna, which is a sustaining aspect. I am merged in Sekten. Okay, so here the crocodile-headed Sobek is still speaking. He's the one that says this statement. In Egyptian symbolism, water is a primordial life-giving source of creation. Fish, as inhabitants of these water, naturally embody its qualities. It's almost like the water carrier in that way. Naturally embody its qualities of fertility and transformation. By identifying himself as the fish of Horus, Sobek associates his essence with solar regenerative powers because of Horus, and as such is a kind of midwife, a living dynamic channel through which life and renewal can be expressed. HPV makes the point that the quote-unquote fish of the great Horus is much like the Indian Makara in its role as the vehicle of Varuna. In both cases, controlling the vehicle suggests mastery of causal forces. Sekten, usually spelled Sekhem, is associated with the life force and thus with the potency of deities and pharaohs. For example, the goddess Sekhmet's name is derived from this root, Sekten or Sekhem, emphasizing her embodiment of dynamic sovereign power. So the statement, I am merged in Sekten, suggests Sobek's union with the life force. Next. This last sentence, I am merged in Sekten, gives the corroboration of and repeats the doctrine of esoteric Buddhism, for it alludes directly to the fifth principle, manas, or the most spiritual part of its essence, rather, which, with the most spiritual part of its essence, rather, which merges into, is absorbed by, and made one with Atma Buddhi after the death of man. So HPB here suggests or equates the sentence, I am merged in Sekten, with the esoteric Buddhist idea. By the way, esoteric Buddhism is very connected to the first generation theosophy and its doctrine, less with formal Buddhism. So I emerge in Sekten with the esoteric Buddhist idea that our true mental self, or manas, upwardly dissolves into a combined unity of Buddhic intuition and pure spirit, or Atma, once the bonds of body, desire, and lower thought are shed. This is another way of describing this absorption into Savek, the five taking on the higher two principles. HPB gives her reasons for this interpretation in the next passage. For Sechem is the residence or loca of the god Chem, Horus, Osiris, or father and son. Hence, the Devachan or Atma Bhuti. In the ritual of the dead, the defunct is shown entering into Sechem with Horus Tat and emerging from it as pure spirit. So again, we have the we benefit from HPB's inside track on this information, which gives her the ability to intuitively and correctly relate to the aid of her informing masters ancient Egyptian doctrine with theosophical thought. So let's take a closer look. Horus represents the solar or Christ principle, whereas Osiris signifies the sacrificial, descending, and transformative aspect related to death and rebirth, the will to be of the Father. Chem represents the numeral life that unites both these expressions. Chem literally means black, or the darkness that is the source of all light, which the Egyptians call Sekhem. The statement, hence the Devachan of Atma Bhuti, in the ritual of the dead, the defunct is shown entering into Sekhem with Horus Tat and emerging from it as pure spirit, further indicates Sekhem's deific qualities by citing its ability to strip away the form aspect, leaving only pure spirit. If you emerge into Sekhem, all form aspect must fall away. The dual deity Horus Tat marries Horus's solar life force with Tat's revelatory wisdom. In Egyptian funerary lore, Horus Tat functions as the divine guide who escorts the defunct into Sekhem. But you have to remember that this divine guide is also incorporated by the triumphant defunct, one that is not required to go back into incarnation. Sekhem, wait a minute now. So it's the divine guide who escorts the defunct into Sekhem, the region of pure spirit, the subtle or spirit fire, which can be seen also as a vehicle, a spirit fire vehicle. And this Horus Tat also orders the rites and spells that dismantle lower attachments and illuminates the inner pathways so the soul may emerge free from all taints of the form aspect. All in all, a good guy to have with you when you're traveling in the afterlife. Any thoughts or questions about this? I know it can get kind of dense, but you could see a theme emerging over and over here. It is from this identification with pure essence that the defunct jiva is then able to say, I see the forms of myself as various men transforming eternally. I know this chapter. He who knows it takes all kinds of living forms, thus revealing a soul perspective on incarnation, that higher wisdom that sees the entire system. Yeah. Okay. Any
Francis,
thoughts? Yes.
sorry, I'm gonna head out, so
Okay. Feel
you're on your
better.
own.
Thanks for
Thank
hanging
you.
in there. We really appreciate your presence, and I hope this week is a little better than last.
Yeah, like I said, this is form of PT sitting here at the computer with my knee at 90 degrees. So
All
thank
right.
you.
Okay. Rest well. Bye-bye. Okay, so from now on, I'll just ask for, in this last 20 minutes, I'll ask for volunteers to read. Okay, so next up, starting now, could we get a reader for this next section? If you could raise your hand, that would be great. Otherwise, I can pull up the participants. Yes, and Veronica, thank you.
And in verse 35, addressing in magic formula that which is called in Egyptian esotericism the ancestral heart or the reincarnating principle, the permanent ego, the defunct says, "O my heart, my ancestral heart, necessary for my transformation, do not separate thyself from me before the guardian of the scales. Thou art my personality within my breast, divine companion, watching over my flesh's bodies. It is in Sekhem that lies concealed the mysterious face, or the real man concealed under the false personality, the triple crocodile of Egypt, the symbol of the higher trinity of human triad, Atma, Buddhi, and Manas. In all the ancient papyri, the crocodile is called Sebek, seventh, while the water is the fifth principle, esoterically, and as already stated, Mr. Garrett Massey shows that the crocodile was the seventh soul, the supreme one of seven, the seer unseen. Even exoterically, Sekhem is the residence of the god Khem, and Khem is Horus, avenging the death of his father, Osiris, hence punishing the sins of man when he becomes a disembodied soul.
Thank you, and Veronica. Okay, so first, I see a hand. Who is that? Or is that just to read? I think so. Okay, yeah, here we go. Okay, so first, and in verse 35, addressing in magic formula, that which is called in Egyptian esotericism, the ancestral heart, or the reincarnating principle, the permanent ego. So the Egyptian heart, called Ib, was believed to have held within itself thought, memory, will, and moral conscience. This is where the idea of the intelligence of the heart comes from. It was literally what got weighed, you could see it here, got weighed against the feather of Ma'at in the Hall of Two Truths, where only a heart free of guilt could pass. That's exoteric. It would be, in fact, free of karma, free of all taint of the lower realms, esoterically. Next, the defunct says, "O my heart, my ancestral heart, necessary for my transformations." So, calling the heart ancestral acknowledges its permanence across multiple lifetimes. The heart is necessary for transformation because it is the seat of the self, capital S, self, without which the cycle through death and rebirth cannot be completed. Next, do not separate thyself from me before the guardian of the scales. In the hall of Ma'at, Anubis, and ultimately Osiris, weigh the deceased's heart against the white feather of truth. Now, according to the exoteric doctrine, if your heart flees or bears sin, you're doomed. The goddess Ammit, shown at far right here, devours your heart and you are no more. But in the esoteric doctrine, you're simply denied release into the field of reeds, also called Anru, and must return to be reborn until such time that any and all unredeemed aspects of the lower self, symbolized by the weight of the heart when set against the pure spirit of the feather of Ma'at, are transformed. Next, thou art my personality within my breast, divine companion, watching over my flesh's bodies. So the heart isn't just part of you, but is rather like a fellow traveler that must be coaxed to stay loyal and strong. By calling the heart my personality, the deceased acknowledges that everything that makes him or her unique, their character, experiences, their very self, resides in the heart. The quote unquote fleshes in watching over my fleshes are all the lower she's from all previous lifetimes, in contradistinction to the higher principles, the ka, or vital double, the ba, personality, soul, the ak, or transfigured spirit, and the sa, or spiritual body. Next, it is in Sechem that lies concealed the mysterious face, or the real man, concealed under the false personality, the triple crocodile of Egypt, the symbol of the higher trinity or human triad, Atma, Buddhi, Manas. Whereas the Sa is the spiritual body, suggested by both the figure in the boat. Sechem is the spiritual potency of that body, suggested by the figure of Horus. The five-pointed stars suggest the realm of the dead for liberated souls, called the An-Ru, the field of reeds. The triple crocodile is HPB's way of relating the Makara energy of the fifth hierarchy to Atma, Buddhi, Manas. You also have lower triple crocodile, as we were discussing before, which would be the lower mental, astral, and physical vehicles. Okay. Next, in all the ancient papyri, the crocodile is called Sebek, seventh, while the water is the fifth principle esoterically, and as already stated, Mr. Gerald Massey shows that the crocodile was the seventh soul, the supreme one of seven, the seer unseen. So it's the seventh, counting from below upwards. So just as Ray 1 and 7 are interrelated, the Egyptian crocodile god Sobek personified the seventh, the innermost principle esoterically, as well as the material depths exoterically. To get a better idea of this dual association with the number 7, and to also gain an alternative take on the triple crocodile, let's take a look at this excerpt from Gerald Massey's The Natural Genesis. Can we get a reader, please? Let's see here. Ben Stock, could you read for us?
Now, in the original myth, there are in fact 3 forms of the dragon or beast. The first of all is the genetrix Typhon of the 7 stars. The second is her son, Sebek, the dragon or crocodile, also of the 7 stars and of the 7th planet, Saturn. The third is the same dragon beast in his final character as Sebek Ra, the solar god of the Typhonians, who was worshipped especially at Ombos and Selser in Egypt. The dragon and ram were both united in him, whether we take the serpent or crocodile for the typical dragon. The star god Sebek was continued as the sun god Sebek. Sebek, the son of Typhon, was degraded by the Osirians in Egypt and turned into an eschatological image of the evil one. The crocodile was hurled into Hades, where he is a follower of the Apap of darkness and is blended with it under a type called Shesh, or Sesi, to whom it is said by the defenders of Ra, thou art destroyed, crushed, punished, serpent Sesi. This beast is a dragon-like crocodile, while the apex for its tail, with the apex for its tail, and as the crocodile is Sevek, this Typhonian monster is a form of the dragon that was cast out of heaven. The apex identifies it with the dragon of darkness, and the crocodile shows the original type of the mythical dragon, Sevek of the seven stars.
Thank you, Ben. So the whole range from highest to lowest is shown here, right? The Genetrix Typhon of the seven stars, those seven stars being the Great Bear. The second, the son of this is often associated with the Little Bear, the Lesser Bear, which is Sevek, right? And then you have the third generation is the seventh planet, Saturn. And then you have the personification of the dragon as beast, as Sebek Ra, the dragon beast, I should say. Still a great solar god or divine dragon of wisdom, right? And then he talks about the fall, which is a purely exoteric understanding of the dragon aspect. But I thought it was interesting here that the beast as a dragon-like crocodile with the Apep, which is the Apep god of Egypt, for its tail, suggesting that you have both aspects of the dragon in one, the tail of the dragon and the head of the dragon representing the higher and lower dragons. So I like that idea. Okay, yeah, the Natural Genesis is the most extraordinary compendium, 2 volumes of this type of information. You can't just read it straight through. It's so extraordinarily dense, but it's great for revealing the or unpacking information that's referenced in the Secret Doctrine. As to the waters association with the number 5, in first generation theosophy, the septenary human principles were Atma, Buddhi, Manas, Kamarupa, Linga, Sharira, Prana, and Stula Sharira. The 5th of these is Linga Sharira, or astral body, whose element is water. The cosmic correspondence to man's astral body is the numinal waters associated with Makara and the sign Capricorn, here called astral ideation. Hence, you have symbols like the sea goat, right? Associated with Capricorn. And finally, even exoterically, Sekhem is the residence of the god Kem. And Kem is Horus avenging the death of his father Osiris, hence punishing the sins of man when he becomes a disembodied soul. So Sekhem is the potency of deity, right? Kem, better known as Min, M-I-N, a fertility god, was often blended with Horus to become Min or Min Horus, thus representing solar rather than earthly fertility, therefore carrying and dispensing this quality of Sekhem. This passage suggests that the solar potency of Min Horus is also an engine of cosmic justice, quote, punishing the sins of man when he becomes a disembodied soul. In other words, a karmic agent. right? Okay. Okay, can we get a reader, please, for this next passage?
I can read.
Great.
Thus, the defunct Asarafield became the god's Kem, who gleans the field of Anru. That is, he gleans either his reward or punishment, as that field is the celestial locality, Devachan, where the defunct is given wheat, the food of divine justice. The fifth group of the celestial beings is supposed to contain in itself the dual attributes of both the spiritual and physical aspects of the universe, the two poles, so to say, of Mahat, the universal intelligence, and the dual nature of man, the spiritual and the physical. Hence its number 5, multiplied and made into 10, connecting it with Makara, the 10th sign of zodiac. G. The 6th and 7th groups partake of the lower qualities of the quaternary. They are conscious, ethereal entities, as invisible as ether, which are shot out like the boughs of a tree from the first central group of the 4, and shoot out in their turn numberless side groups, the lower of which are the nature spirits, or elementals of countless kinds and varieties, from the formless and unsubstantial, the ideal thoughts of their creators, down to the atomic, though to human perception, invisible organisms.
Thank you, Martha. Okay. First, thus the defunct Osirified became the god's Kem, who gleaned the fields of Anru. That is, he gleans either his reward or punishment, as that field is a celestial locality, Devachan, where the defunct is given wheat, the food of divine justice. Okay, once your heart passes the weighing of Ma'at, you become Osirified, or transformed into an aspect of Osiris, literally one with Osiris, just as in the esoteric Christianity, you become one with the Christ principle. Transformation into the god Kem means becoming a creative, life-giving force by quote unquote gleaning or harvesting the fields of Anru, the theosophical Devachan, where the risen soul now dwells. Actually, divine justice is meted out at the time of the weighing of the heart against the feather. For once the deceased is Osirified, he or she has moved beyond the karmic phase. Next. The fifth group of the celestial beings is supposed to contain in itself the dual attributes of both the spiritual and physical attributes of the universe. The two poles, so to say, of Mahat, the universal intelligence, and the dual nature of man, the spiritual and the physical. So this perfectly describes the dual fifth hierarchy about which DK says, a clue to the mystery lies in the relation of this fifth group to the two contracting poles. They are the fivefold links, the benign uniters, and the producers of the at-one-ment. Esoterically, they are the saviors of the race, and from them emanates that principle which, in conjunction with the highest aspect, lifts the lower aspect up to heaven. In occult anatomy, the pentagram stands for the five-limbed thinking human, manas, the fifth principle, the conscious self. Thus, Makara becomes the hieroglyph for manas, the bridge between spirit, atma buddhi, and matter. And this is where we're going to have to stop for this time. Any last thoughts or questions before we pack it up? Okay, let's see, we're July 28th. So this Friday will be a treatise on cosmic fire. And then on the first Sunday of August, which I think is the 3rd, we'll do the secret teachings of all ages. So thanks very much for attending. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you, Francis.
Yes. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Secret Doctrine,